Right, let's talk about this book. I'm not going to hold it up for the entire time because you've got eyes. You can see it. It's American Gods. It's by Neil Gaiman. It was published in 2001 and is now relevant again thanks to Amazon Prime and Stars, the TV network. So as you can see, this is quite a chunker of a book. It took me way too long to read it, given how it's actually quite an easy read. Neil Gaiman has a very good style of his writing. I've always thought that. I haven't read too many of his works, but the ones I have read, they're very quick. He's got a very breezy style. It's not like an epic fantasy, stodgy wall-to-wall text kind of thing. It flows well. So his writing, I really liked. The rest of the story, however, not so much. This book has more than just American Gods in it. I will demonstrate now how sort of misleading it is. The actual story is only this much of the book. The rest of it is all sort of rubbish, like where it's acknowledgements, just like it's fine, and then it has like 1,000,000 pages of bonus material for some reason. It's probably the most bonus material I've ever seen in a book, which includes an entire novella in here called The Monarch of the Glen, which is an American Gods novella, which I didn't read because my thoughts on this book are very mixed, and they're mixed towards the negative end, so I didn't really care to carry on with it. I spoke to my friend who's also read this book, and he said it wasn't necessary to understand things, so I don't really care. Sorry if that offends American Gods fans. So let's get into what this story is about. So American Gods is the story of this guy called Shadow Moon, which is a stupid name. It doesn't explain why he's called Shadow Moon in the book. It's just a weird thing. So Shadow Moon, he's described as a big guy who is, I believe he's like of a mixed race. That's only relevant because his heritage sort of comes into play into the story sometimes, but he gets recruited straight out of prison by this guy called Mr. Wednesday, who, spoiler alert, is a god. So like obviously I'm going to keep this review as non-spoilery as I can. Very very like simple stuff though. Like there's a guy called Mr. Wednesday. This book's all about different gods basically. It's a battle between the old gods, like, you know, your Norse gods, your Egyptian gods, Greek gods, all of those guys, versus the new gods, which are people that are personifying technology, the media, like globalization, that kind of thing. So these two groups get into a big fight, basically, and that's what the book is about. Shadow is recruited by Mr. Wednesday to be basically a assistant. He says, oh, you're going to have to do errands for me, and sometimes if you have to, you're gonna have to hurt some people. So you know, it's all leading up to this big showdown at the end, basically. Throughout the book, Shadow and Wednesday go around talking to different people, and the beginning of this book is great. It's really strong start. It's a strong premise. Really like the idea of exploring like these different gods, especially the new gods. The American Gods, I think, is a very interesting idea. Like what would happen if people started worshipping these new technologies and television and so on. Like there could be a god of YouTube and he'd probably look like PewDiePie, and it would be really depressing probably. And you know, that's the sort of thing that I was really hoping the book would go into, like exploring these sorts of new gods and the way that people interact with new religions and technologies sort of around that sort of thing. But disappointingly, it doesn't go there. It doesn't really go anywhere, and that's really my biggest issue with the book. Like, it's got a strong start. The premise is great. The opening few chapters are amazing. And then right around, I'd say page 250-ish, it just boom, it just goes into this soggy pit. It's got soggy middle syndrome, like seriously bad. Like the plot goes somewhere in the middle. I won't spoil what it is, but there's a very distinct break between the opening act and then the middle, and the middle is just so frustrating. I was so frustrated reading it because it just seemed so pointless. Like Neil Gaiman, normally he writes books that are a bit on the shorter side. And I think, and I might be wrong, but I think he didn't really know what to do with this. Like, the main story that he presented is not enough content to stretch over 635 pages, which is what this is. And I think to compensate for that, he introduced this secondary story, which takes up such a huge amount of the middle, and then isn't paid off or really mentioned until right near the end. And it is paid off. Like, I'll give him credit. The ending to the book is quite strong. I eventually ended up rating this 3 stars. And until I got to about the last 100 pages, I was leaning towards 2 stars because I was just getting so fed up with it. But I think Gaiman really pulled it together at the end. I think the ending was very efficient in tying up a lot of the storylines that he'd introduced and hadn't really sent anywhere. And I think there was still 1 or 2 plot lines that were introduced and just never got followed up on at all. But I think you wouldn't have had to have such a tight and efficient ending if you'd done a better job of developing things as the story went on. The main frustration for me with all of that stuff, as well as it being sort of plot-wise being very saggy in the middle, the main character, Shadow, really wound me up. Like, he had the potential to be a good character. Like, he's this normal guy who's brought on this weird sort of road trippy adventure with this enigmatic guy, Mr. Wednesday. He doesn't really know what's going on. But the problem is he doesn't really know what's going on, and he never really figures it out. So he's basically a classic audience cipher. Like, I realised this quite early on. He's a very passive protagonist. He's very bland. He doesn't have a lot of strong opinions about anything. He doesn't ask questions. And this is one of the things that annoys me as well, just as a brief tangent. Neil Gaiman, I think, thinks he's much more clever than he is, because he kept, like, throughout the book, he kept doing this thing with Shadow, where he's just going along with things, and he's meant to be the audience cipher, right? And when you would have an audience cipher, you would expect him to ask questions to the other characters. He's like the everyman, so he's like, okay, so what's going on? Explain it to me. And that's how you get your exposition across. In this, Shadow asks the questions, and Wednesday says, I don't pay you to ask questions. And he never answers them. So we never learn anything. Like, Shadow's like, well, what does it mean to be a god? And Wednesday just goes, shut up, fool. And, okay, cool. I guess we'll just read about your little lover's tiff then. I don't know. So it's just sort of frustrating in that way. To create an audience cipher character and then never have him learn anything. It just means that he's stumbling around blind the whole book. And then we're left asking questions that are never answered, because nobody bothers to answer these things for him at any point, and they don't say it to each other, because Neil Gaiman knows that rule at least. You don't just have people say things randomly to each other that they already know. So it's kind of frustrating on that front. And then the other thing that Gaiman does that really sort of got on my nerves was that he did this. He has this thing where he finds a recurring, like, he finds a gag or a theme or something, like he wants, and he does it. Like, I'll give an example. It's very light spoilers. I won't give the context to it. But basically, they meet this character. Wednesday and Shadow meet this character, and Shadow says, "Oh, who are we meeting?" And Wednesday tells him, but the text says Wednesday told him, but he didn't hear him properly. Okay. Like, okay, so what, we didn't learn anything about that. Okay, fine, whatever. And then later on, he meets another character, and then he's like, Shadow thought that his name was this, but he didn't hear it properly, so it wasn't. Like, what's the point of that? And like with the first example as well, like, you never find out who that guy is. So why do that? It's just a weird thing. And there's a few other things like that in the book where, like, he brings up these things that are just totally bizarre, and there was no point in doing them, and it just served to wind me up as a reader, really. And by the end of it, it was all very convenient. I think a lot of the, like, right before the final act, things started falling into place more conveniently, because I think Neil Gaiman realised that he'd messed up and he hadn't developed anything, and Shadow hadn't learned anything. So there's a point where something happens. I won't tell you what it is again for fear of spoilers, but something happens, and then suddenly Shadow knows everything, Like, he went from knowing absolutely nothing to now knowing everything. And as a read, like, I think Neil Gaiman thought like the people reading it were dumb, or he was like being more subtle about it than he is, because it's not subtle at all. Like, by about page 450, I figured out where everything was going in the book, and then like 100 pages later, Shadow's like, "Oh, I know what's happening now," and you're like, "Yeah, mate, like, we all figured it out fucking ages ago. Get the program, Shadow Moon, dear God." So that's basically it. Those are my thoughts on American Gods. I gave it 3 stars overall. Like, it's a good read. I didn't lose anything by reading it. I wasn't like angry by reading it. Check it out if you want to. I think I'm gonna watch the TV series as well. It's like 8 episodes or whatever for season 1, so why not just see how it's different. So let me know what you think of American Gods if you've read it, and let me know if you think the TV series is worth watching. I've seen like half of 1 episode or something, so I'll check out the rest of it anyway. And also tell me in the comments if you want to see a video with my thoughts on the American Gods thing TV show. It's too hot in here. It's too bloody hot for this. Stay tuned for some bonus dog content. So I'm just in my house, right? And I walked past this door, and then I saw my dog just lying here. What are you doing, dog? Why are you here in this room? This is not your normal room. You are a strange creature of hair and dreams.